And questions will be, I've told the students we'll be answering all the questions at the end. I'll be moderating the questions for you. So I'll help you out there. All your chef.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you, Mr. Datta. Really appreciate and very kind of you. And all the things that you said, I'm just going to say yes and back. So I don't have to repeat all of them all over again, of all the niceness, the kindness, the love between the families, and absolutely vivid, admirer of Mr. Datta. And then Arjun, this little boy who now is the cool cat, and the director who runs this big business. It's absolutely odd. And of course, I remember going back to your marriage and all the family events and stuff. So great relationship. Dear students, my name is Sabi. If you're already not, kind of inundated with the information by Mr. Arjun Datta of what I've done in my past, I will just give you a quick brief. But don't get intimidated by it. You have to keep writing this. We were just discussing this some time back that, when you pass out of college, they teach you how to write a fancy CV. And I'm sure even Mr. Arjun Datta will do the same when you are passing out, and your CVs will look cooler than mine. And I can assure you that. So this is purely about you, and this time is for you. And we've been doing a lot of these web seminars, and I think there's a lot been discussed about the current scenario of what is happening with COVID. So I'm not really going to get into that too much, though I know it's really concerning and bothering all of us. But you already must have heard and been told and been reading and hearing on TV and all medias. So that's already an overload of information, and we already know a bit, and we also don't know various things. I'm going to purely talk to you as a chef today, as a mentor, as somebody who has spent about a good 30 odd years in the industry. And I've been very, very fortunate to have had mentors like Mr. Datta himself. I am currently the young president, not the young president, but president of the young association. So let me clarify that, because a lot of that, debate comes up, and I'm very embarrassed to say I'm young. I told you that joke on how I'm scared to enter house class. Anyway, so, I'm going to touch over 5, maybe 8 points that I personally feel are very important to be a successful chef, to be a successful hospitality professional, to be a successful person in the industry. And definitely I'm going to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. And then Mr. Arjun Datta has also been very kind. He has put some questions together which are very complex, and I should have gone through a B school, or at least have had an MBA degree to answer them successfully, but I don't think I can. So I'm going to try my best. So Arjun, please bear with me if I don't kind of do justice to all the questions. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few points that I feel are personally very, very important in every hospitality professional's life. Mr. Datta, please feel free to correct, add. I know I can see you there, your mic is mute, but kind of join in and rescue me whenever you feel necessary. Now, this is something what I call is emerging challenges and opportunities. I wouldn't say threats, I would say emerging challenges and opportunities, because with every emerging challenge, there is always some opportunity that comes up. And some basic points that I personally feel should be kept in mind to go through these challenges, to kind of come back as a winner in these challenges. And also because, our life is especially a life as a hospitality graduate, like we were just speaking some time back, that, we all been in our uniforms, our button down jackets or chef uniforms. And this is till the day we die, and which means we don't really retire. And chefs are always going to be chefs, hoteliers are always going to be hoteliers. So this is a marathon race. So there is no rush. You don't have to worry that you're going to miss out on something because of COVID, because it's a month or 2 or 6 or a year till the vaccine comes out. So please let me assure you that there is no panic whatsoever. Whatever anybody is saying, whatever the industry stalwarts are saying, your life is yours, and you will have a lot of time to keep proving yourself, keep achieving your goals. And this is an absolutely long race, like a marathon race. So this is your time to actually prepare yourself. You have amazing mentors like Mr. Datta, Arjun, and all your amazing professors and teachers. You have a beautiful college. You have fantastic, motivated faculty. So your job is to take the best that you can. So my first point is about mentorship. So you have some of the finest mentors in your college. And I have been very fortunate to have had good mentors. So my first point that I want to stress upon to all of you young students, young chefs, and hospitality graduates, that please take your training and mentorship very seriously, because as you go out into the industry, it's an ocean. You might lose out a few months here and there because of this whole, epidemic that is happening, and that is the case for everybody. So right now you're not even losing out because the whole world is losing out. So I guess at some point we're going to just wipe this chapter off our life and move ahead and come back stronger. So looking ahead, the training and mentorship that you're getting currently at IICA through your mentors, through your teachers and professors, through your chefs is extremely important, and it is imperative that you take serious note of it. In the current scenario, there are subjects that have become very important, like food science, food tech, food biology, microbiology, hotel accountancy, or restaurant accounting, hygiene. These are subjects that are slightly boring, and I kid you not, even I didn't pay much attention to them when I was in college. And all my food science lab classes, I was the one who was always missing out. And I still probably have an 80 KT to IHM Calcutta or IHM Bhubaneswar that I have to go back and give it. But back in the days, it was not much important. So you could kind of still get away with it. But today, I am learning food science all over again, and this is purely because trying to understand how these bacterial or viral infections could work, and how you could keep yourself safe, how you could sanitize various places and surfaces, be contactless, and things like that. So again, coming back to mentoring and training, take your time seriously at your college. You are going to get to learn something that you're never going to get again in your life. You will keep adding value and keep adding training as you move on, but this time is extremely important and you must take it very seriously. My next point that I'm going to touch upon is something that your students from your college have come, and whoever has worked with me and various other students from the industry has kept on asking me. In fact, I was talking to the Amity University kids yesterday, and everybody keeps asking this question, that what is the path? Should I go to a restaurant? Should I go to a hotel? Should I start my own bakery? Should I go abroad? Should I do another culinary degree or a diploma? Now, I'll tell you what. If you have the chance to go abroad, please go abroad, because it will just add more exposure in your life. And at some point in your life, you must go abroad. You should go to France. You should go to Italy. You should go to US. You should go to Australia. You should go to UK. These 4 or 5 countries where you're going to see some of the finest cuisine or the culinary experts, and you'll get to work with them and expose yourself. But also, let me assure you, whatever you're learning today in your college and the exposure that you're getting is the finest, and there's not much that you're going to get anywhere beyond this when you go abroad. It's not that if you go to some other college like a Ferrandi or a CIA and stuff like that, you're going to learn something beyond that you've already seen. Yes, it's always going to be good exposure. And second part of it is restaurants or hotels. Start your own business or go to work. I would always say, if you have the experience, please start your business, but you can't have experience without working. So you might as well work under somebody, take some mentorship, even if it is as a business entrepreneur, rather than jumping in cold, because business means it's somebody's money. It's either your money, it's your family's money, or borrowed money, or a loan, or a bank's money. Now, when you have money and you are, you're running some business with somebody's money, it's serious and you can't lose it. If you do lose it, there are repercussions. So before you get to that point, I rather you do some mentoring training at places that you feel will give you these additional, knowledge or experience, apart from cooking, apart from plating, apart from food costing, because running a business is various other things apart from just cooking and plating and food costing. I'm going to come back to the entrepreneurship part a little later again. Also talking about restaurants and hotels, I think hotels are a good place to start with. But if you have absolutely made up your mind that, you want to work in a particular restaurant, under a particular chef, because you have been following him or her and you idolize after him or her, and you specifically want to be mentored by a particular chef in a particular cuisine, it is always good to go to a hotel. Otherwise, if you have made up your mind and if you're very specific, then please go to the restaurant of your choice, where you can get to learn exactly what you have in mind. Why am I saying hotels? Is because it gives you an opportunity and flexibility to look at hot kitchen, cold kitchen, garde manger, veg prep, meat prep, fabrication, bakery, patisserie, boulangerie. It gives you a rounded effect. It also gets you look into the banquet bulk kitchen, the back of the house kitchen stewarding, dishwash, how the stewarding, handles all the setup of banquets, setup of restaurants, cleaning part of the restaurants and the kitchens, which is now going to become more and more and more critical, in terms of hygiene. Now, Mr. Datta has worked abroad, and I've spoken to him often about the hygiene standards in France or in the US, how it is with all the international chains, with the cruise lines, and now the same things are going to be implemented. It's not that it was not in India, it's just that now it is going to be more stringently implemented. And all of these things you will be able to get a better exposure if you start yourself in a good hotel chain, international hotel chain, and things like that. Knowledge of basics. I think this is, I'm going to leave to your mentors to talk about it. I'm sure they bore you enough. Arjun, I'm sure, is on your case, trying to teach you and tell you and kind of drill onto you that how important basics are. So I'm not going to bore you with that anymore. But I must say that there is a question often that how do I do fusion food? Or similarly, I would say, how do you do fusion music? So if your basics are good with anything, you can then fuse things onto it. So it's very important, whether it's a year or 2 year or 3 year or 4 year, for everybody, the time is different. Somebody can pick up something in 6 months and somebody can take 4 years to pick up the same thing. Till such time your basics are strong, please pay attention to them. And then the world is your oyster. Go out and do whatever you like, whatever makes you happy, whatever lets you express your music, or lets you express whatever your heart's content, be it your art on a plate, be it your boulangerie, be it your patisserie, be it your pastry decor, be it your sugar art, be it your chocolate art. Do whatever that you like, or whatever lets you feel that you are able to express yourself as a food artist or as a chef or as a culinary professional. All of that is possible provided you have your basics in place. I was once cooking for the World Presidents Meet. There's an organization called WPO, World Presidents Organization, and this has Mr. Mukesh Ambani from India. It has Mr. Azim Premji from India. It has some of the stalwarts of this country. There's 6 people, I think, in that from India. And I was very fortunate because I like Mr. Arjun Datta mentioned, that we were cooking for the F1. So similarly in my life, I've cooked for various such dignitaries, from, let's say, the presidents, prime ministers, to the Bollywood, to the cricketers. So this was one day where I got a chance to cook for the presidents. And why am I mentioning this story is because I got a chance to very closely hear what Mr. Azim Premji was talking. And one of the things that he stressed upon and kept speaking about is the word attitude. Now, we loosely use the word attitude and we say it's a bad attitude or a good attitude, but I can assure you there is no such thing. It is purely your way towards life, and it can only be progressive. It can only be positive. It can only be something that will be kind. That would be something that would make others see you in a very bright and a positive light. So attitude is something that you wear every day, like the clothes you wear, or your grooming. It's your extension to the rest of the world. And as hospitality professionals and as young chefs, it has to be something that will take you forward, because not just that you are the future of this industry, you're also the future of all of us, this country and the mankind, because whatever you do from here on is going to shape the way the world is. So your attitude is extremely important to all of us today. And that is why I wanted to stress upon this point of attitude, that it doesn't matter where you come from, what is your background, do you have money in the bank or not, which is your family, how wealthy they are. All of this is not important. What is important is, once you're out there as a young chef, or as a young professional, as a young entrepreneur, it is your attitude that is going to change everything around you and change the world along with that. Are you guys getting bored? Arjun, is everybody getting bored? Have I bored everybody enough?
No, chef. I'm writing questions. I'm definitely not getting bored, and I don't think anyone else is.
I'm enjoying every minute of it, Chef Zavi, with you.
Okay. Communication skills. This is something that as in, you guys can go and look up my Josh Talks. I spoke on that forum for Indian youth. I spoke also on this forum of the TED Talks, the TIE forum, which is the entrepreneurship forum. So Josh, TIE, TED. I've also spoken on a forum for B schools in the US. It's called 10 Minutes With. Now, all these forums are not food forums or not forums for chef. It's primarily a forum to tell people about your journey. And one of the things that was the biggest stumbling block in my life, and probably still is my communication skills. So I was born partially dyslexic, and I still don't read and write well. I speak a lot, but I kid you not, my speaking of English started only when I came to Bombay. Before that, I came from a mofussil town of Bihar, West Bengal border. I only spoke Bengali. I didn't really read and write that well. So my school was miserable. Of course, I don't have to, kind of elaborate on that. I didn't speak and read and write English at all. It's only after I came to Bombay, watching movies, watching TV. I think I've watched every episode of Friends some 10 times over. It's purely how I learned English, or how I started speaking English. And I still didn't write English till the T9 happened, or that guidance thing that keeps predicting the spellings. And even today, I have to use that to write English when I'm chatting, when I'm writing. So communication is very important. And today, as young chefs, young entrepreneurs, young hospitality graduates, I can assure you that you must work on your communication. You have to write your mails, you have to write your proposals, you have to write your menus, you have to write your P&Ls. Your communication to the world is who you are, because not everybody is going to be able to come and experience your food, nor they're going to experience meeting you one-to-one. So whatever you're writing, whatever you're saying, it's very important. And that's something that you have to work upon, because some of us have issues, backgrounds. I can speak for myself. I still don't speak Hindi, and it's miserable. Every time I go on TV, trying to do a TV show turns out to be a comedy show. So I've been now listed under the comedy and not under cookery. And now all the new shows that have been offered to me are largely stand-up comedies. And that's why I'm a bit, concerned that should I look at a career option change, which is not bad, but I'm thinking. I'm going to talk about a few things that I have, these are issues that I have, but I think as human beings, we all go through these similar issues. So self-doubt, this is something that I'm not saying that I have it often, but I do have it. I had it a lot as a young kid. I had it a lot growing up. I think when you go through your, issues in college, and you're not the best kid in education, you're not the best in grooming, you don't have a fancy family background where your family has a lot of money to support you, your father is retired, post-college, you have to figure it out yourself. Obviously, go through these motions of self-doubt or low confidence. But I can tell you this is something happens. I've spoken to a lot of, intelligent people, much more intelligent and achievers than I am. And I think this is a case that everybody goes through. So don't worry. Just come back stronger the next day and say, hey, I had a thing yesterday. I'm going to work harder today. And this, you must believe, happens to every single person. Young, old, successful, unsuccessful, very successful. Everybody goes through the same situations every now and then. Never doubt yourself. Self-doubt is something that is a killer, that kills your confidence. And if you don't have confidence, the only difference between, when I'm playing cricket and Sachin Tendulkar playing cricket, that he's confident and I'm not. So that's it. It's a joke. But Arjun, I don't know if Arjun knows this or not. Arjun, did you know that we used to play cricket behind the olive? I don't know if your boys ever participated or not. We used to have regular cricket. And I think
No, I had no idea.
So a lot of these kids who came from this, hotels and all, and they were fitter and younger. So we used to induct them in the team. You play for us.
But I'm happy they were learning more than cooking. That's the plus of it.
And now we're doing the same with football in Bangalore. I'm getting all the kids to play football and volleyball. So yes, I am going to come to a point that I had discussed, and this I have to refer to a beautiful story. Mr. Datta once told me that his father, they had come from partition. Sir, correct me if I'm wrong. And then your father used to teach your brothers how to wrestle to make you physically very, very strong.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. That's a lot of good food afterwards.
So there was a bath and a wrestling story, and I remember this. I don't know why, and I keep telling myself this every now and then, that I have to be physically strong. So tenacity. Now in this industry, you have to be mentally strong, and you definitely have to be physically strong. I remember Chef Gill once telling me, Sabi, please take care of your knees and your feet, because even if you're not working hands-on at the age of 50, you still have to be walking around your hotels, restaurants, your kitchens, or whatever the businesses that you're handling. So if your feet is perfect, and if you can manage to still walk, whatever age that you are going to be relevant to this industry. To stay relevant to this industry, you have to stay physically fit and have very strong tenacity, mental tenacity. Mr. Datta, thank you so much for that story. These beautiful stories are actually something that are such memories that carry you through bad times and times when your chips are down. that really gives you that confidence. Okay, that everybody goes through the same ones.
That's right.
I remember having, this chat with you sitting at the Daryacha office. Where you had offered me
Yeah.
chai and biscuits and this long. Actually, I was very small that time. I remember this maybe 2007 that time.
Yeah. I was fresh out of college at that time.
Story and like
A good health has always been the most favorite thing because you look so good when you're healthy. Whatever shirt you wear, you look good in the morning and you good late in the evening also you look good. So health has a lot of benefits beyond strong knees and feet. It makes you look very, very good. And good people are always in demand.
Thank you, sir. Very, very kind. Very kind. Thank you, sir. I'm going to talk about this one point that I have a lot, which says the fire in the belly. And I think a lot of us who come from small backgrounds, small towns, or, and I think a lot of us have stories like that. A lot of successful people around the world, not necessarily everybody has been born with a silver spoon or a golden spoon or whatever that spoon is. A lot of us are born without a spoon, and that's perfectly okay because we're all born equal, and I strongly believe that it's God who has made us all equal, and it doesn't matter how I look or how I speak or where I come from or how much money. I have to be confident, and there's one thing that I really strongly advocate is fire in the belly. That you should have that fire in the belly, and that's something that keeps you fighting, that keeps you fighting. There will be times like right now, times are bad. We're all going through bad times. Our restaurants are struggling. We're struggling with our payments of rents because we haven't had business for months now. But fire in the belly is something that I strongly feel that would make me come back stronger, come back to do something different, something better. If not just restaurants, maybe something else. And hopefully things get better. Hey, this whole vaccine thing has been discussed at a war footing. There are way more intelligent people out there, who are doing all of these. And this is the fate of the world. So I'm sure we're all going to be back. And when we're back, we should all be fighting fit and stay healthy and mentally, stay fit. Quickly going to touch upon entrepreneurship. That this was a request from Arjun that I have one of the chefs I think who had a very fancy job as culinary director of the Olive Group, and I quit that at the age of 40 and got into pursuing my own dream of starting my own business, own restaurants, own consulting opportunities, and all of this purely without any funds or any support of any money or any kind of a bank loan. I purely got out saying that I'm a hands-on person. I am confident. I have abilities. I have experience at 20 years behind me. Let me see what I can do. And one thing led to another, from consulting to restaurants. Today we have some of the premium-most brands in this country. Down south we have Bob's Bar and Big Brewski. Pune we have Minority. Delhi we have Lavash and Poppins. And a lot of your ex-students and your seniors and super seniors who have come and worked in all of these, right from Olive days to now, a lot of your students have come and worked with us and are still working with us. And they have been an exceptional help and a pillar of strength to the core team of my company. And this purely comes through the mentoring and training that your college provides you. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Arjun, for constantly supporting us. So entrepreneurship is something that I think I personally took a while. I'm not saying you have to wait till 40. Please don't get scared. You can start it when you are at 20, because some of you come from business families. You already know the ropes. You know the laws. You understand how chartered accountancy, cost accountancy work. You can make your own financial decisions. You know the business laws. You know hospitality laws. If you are and you have that kind of a background, and if you know somebody in your family has been doing this, by all means. I didn't had, because my father is a government servant and there's nobody ever from hospitality background. So it took my time. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm still learning. And I will continue to learn, because business is again like a new animal. It's like a new zoo, a new animal. So you have to start from scratch. But I purely went on the confidence that I can cook, and I'm honest. I'm sincere. I worked very hard. I have the right interest in mind. I am a team player. I lead from front with examples. And I think these are very, very important things that you must keep in mind. I've heard Mr. Anil Ambani speaking that. I was talking to this very big restaurateur, Ashish Kapoor of the Yo China Wine Company Group, saying the same thing. Sabi, we come in as team leaders and we bring energy, and rest of our team feed off us. So as a team leader, as an entrepreneur, you have to become first a team leader. So it's not just about money or skill or knowledge. You have to have the ability to lead 2, 3, 20, 200, 1,000 people, eventually, let's say 2,000, 5,000 people, to a particular goal, and they should dream your dream. They should all be able to see your dream. So you have to see it very strongly in yourself. And that is why I'm saying that there are various things that are attached to entrepreneurship. If you already feel confident, if you have some of these, work on the other factors. If you're a good chef, then work on the other factors. If you already know the money part or the business part or the legislation part of it, then work on your food and concept. If you have all of these, then work on your leadership skills. So if you have a rounded portfolio of all of these attributes, then definitely go for it. And I feel all of you today are have that opportunity of not getting into the same, go to a hotel and start working as a IT, MIT or CT or any of these programs. You have the unique opportunity to start something of your own. And that is why I think entrepreneurship is something that is absolutely up your alley. We're going to keep talking about it maybe in future again, whenever I get a chance to speak to you. I'm going to quickly touch upon some of my recent works in terms of sustainability, in terms of working with Indian regional food, working with Chef's Manifesto, working with Slow Food. And I think today it's more relevant to the scenario of what's happening today, is because these are the factors that I personally feel are going to become very important. And that's why I'm going to touch upon these few points with you about being sustainable, being careful to the nature, being careful to Mother Earth, using everything in a way that is tolerant, being very careful and cautious in terms of harvesting, provenance, understanding how our food is coming from, where it is coming from, be kind to the farmers who grow food for us, be careful in not wasting or utilizing or overutilizing your resources. So you drain the resources, because if I'm wasting somebody else will go hungry somewhere. So I think sustainability, working with your local food or local produce or something like slow food is very, very important. Now these are really big subjects. We can actually do full workshops on sustainability, slow food, provenance, carbon footprint, but I'm going to just leave you with these thoughts because you're all youngsters, and since I know that you're going to be the future, you're the future decision makers, and the world will largely depend on your decisions, on your shoulders. So I would urge you to think of these few factors of sustainable cooking or sustainability, slow food, or being respectful to your nature and cooking with local ingredients, promoting and talking about Indian food and Indian regional food, working with what we call ancient knowledge, food that came from the Vedic era, through our ancestors. Go back to the food from your grandparents, great grandparents, and their era of family recipes, family secrets, and family traditions. And I think these all are the factors that are the ones that would make us Indians and India very prominent in the food scene and the food business. And all of you will stand out if you follow these principles in your business or entrepreneurship, or in your careers and life as a chef going ahead. I think that's pretty much it. I don't, as in there are various things that I can keep talking about, but that will go on forever. I'm going to quickly also mention one line about the California Walnuts Challenge we are doing. So I would request all of you to participate. I know one of the winners of the previous years is from your college, Aratrika. She's currently working with us as a pastry chef. Well done, Arjun, again, on mentoring amazing young kids. And I hope you guys participate and you do well. And the forms have already been sent out. We have the last 2-3 days to participate. You can also pass it on to friends or from other schools and other culinary schools and hotel schools and colleges, or any other young chefs in the industry, because it not just doesn't limit to only young students. It also is applicable to young chefs who have just passed out till the age of 25, who are working professionals in the industry. So it's open to all. Feel free. We're going to continue to do similar workshops and going to probably come back with some more interesting things to work with you and keep you engaged. And of course, connect with me on my Instagram, which is Sabi Gorai, and Chef Sabi, which is Facebook, and Sabyasachi, which is already shared with Arjun. And then I have all the time to now start answering questions. If I've not confused you enough, let me do that even more now.
Well, first of all, Chef, thanks a lot. I must compliment the energy and the knowledge that you've shared. It's been really, really, really insightful. So insightful that I have like 2 pages of questions. How's that?
Sleeping at home is what I'm doing is gathering energy because 42 days of lying in bed.
You know, when you were speaking, one of the things that you pointed out was attitude, and I can't forget the day I came back and I joined IIC. I think a year or two into it, Mr. Datta narrating a story to me and telling me that Chef Sabi told me skills we can teach them, but just good attitude. And he has gone on to quote since then till now that every student must imbibe good attitude. So I think what you've touched upon is absolutely relevant. Now, Chef, we would love to invite our students to ask any questions. Do they have any? Students, go ahead and type down your questions in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to moderate the questions for you with Chef Sabi, because I'm eagerly waiting to ask quite a few questions myself.
They're very difficult.
So while we're waiting for them, no, I've got the easy ones.
Okay.
All right. So while I'm waiting for my first question from my students, let me go ahead and ask you mine first. This is starting with your journey. You mentioned that, having mentors is crucial, and I'm sure you've had quite a few in your time. Can you perhaps, kind of go back in memory lane and talk about your first mentor? What was that one advice that you got right when you were beginning and something that you've stuck on to till date?
So I was very lucky to be on the Chef Comp team. I was the Chef Comp team leader from IHM Calcutta in the year '95, and I came to New Delhi, Bombay that year. And that year was the year of the 10th Chef Comp, and I was extremely lucky. And that's why I keep saying the exposure is very important. You must expose yourself to best restaurants, best chefs, because the learning is intense. And it's like a little packet, but it's like a watered down course. So I had 12 chefs as judges, and it's a galaxy of stars. Chef Manjit Singh Gill, Chef Hemant Oberoi, late Adil Saraswat, Chef Satish Arora, Chef Daniel Gali, Chef Sanjeev Kapoor, Chef Chef that time I would need Mr. Datta, the ITC head from Western region, I forget his name. Gave Desai?
Chef Vaidya Mathur?
Chef Gave Desai.
Gave Desai.
Yes. Chef Gave Desai.
Yeah, okay.
Chef Soundararajan. Sanjay Srigar. I don't know if any of you remember, he was the youngest sous chef at the Merit Hotel back in 1995. He was that time president of Mr. Charan Singh's grandson. So like a galaxy of 12 chefs. And I am this, absolute novice who has no clue of anything, and just third year, student, really, I would say arrogant, talking, messed up, all of those kind of things, issues with grooming, issues with communication skills. And I'm standing in front of all of these stalwarts trying to present my food. I got some of the best prize of my life. So one day there was beef roulade or something on the cold platter, and back in the days I didn't eat beef. Now I eat the whole cow alive type. And Chef Satish Arora came up to me and he's like, "Have you tasted this?" And I'm like, "No, chef." And he's like, and he loses it. He said, "Are you mad, Sabi? You are in the National Chef Comp. You are presenting to Chef Satish Arora and you haven't even tasted." And I'm like very coyly, I'm like, "Chef, I don't eat beef." And after 2 abuses, he's like, "What is wrong with you?" So put salt and check salt and seasoning. One learning I'll never forget in my life, starting with Chef Satish Arora. So there's so many things that kept happening. I remember Chef Sanjeev Kapoor came up to my table and I was doing some kind of a biryani that day. And the biryani rice was not actually rice. I was working with pasta rice. So I was making a biryani with pasta rice, which looks like rice. And I was doing a reconstructed egg. Now, back in 95, 96, people haven't heard of things like this. And he was quite amused. So he comes to me, he said, "Yaar, ye banda na karega ek din." Mad, he's but kuch na kuch to zarur karega ek din. Now, I lost all the 13 challenges. Arjun. There were 13, different cups I completed, and I lost each and every one. Some of them I extremely close, but I am from West Bengal. I have no backup support. At that time, IHM Calcutta was probably in the pits of no support, no infrastructure, and competing against the finest of colleges. I would go to the Dadar beach almost every evening, like disheartened, heartbroken, because I used to put so much effort in my work. And my other two, three friends that came along, barring one Chang, who's like this legendary cool cat chef now, most of them just came to chill in Bombay to, go to party, go to Fashion Street and shop and things like that. I would go to the bloody other beach, sit and cry. And I have no shame in saying that I would literally sit and cry. So one day, I think Chef Coelho, this legendary principal Chef Vernon Coelho, who I look up to as my godfather, told me, I so wish that you had come to us, means come to IHM Bombay, not gone to IHM Calcutta, and we would have done something different. So don't lose heart. You have the right metal in you. It just needs to be polished. So since that day onwards, I think I have stayed in touch with Chef Coelho, and IHM Bombay 60 years book got published. And though I'm not an IHM Bombay graduate, I'm the only person in that book in the 60 years, pages where all the stalwarts of this country and the world is there, but me. So I was very lucky. And the last, I think, was Chef Saundaraj's advice that when you walk into the kitchen, walk in with a clean mind. Don't have anything bothering you. When you walk into a kitchen, walk in with a clean mind. So you will be able to observe and see and learn much more than people who are there for 12, 14, 16, 18 hours. And I think that one advice made me catapult into the leadership ladder very fast, because if you observe more, if you see more, if you grasp more, you automatically have a better understanding of your workspace. You know what's happening. You know the cold room door is open and the temperature is leaking. You know there's something happened in the butchery that needs to be attended to. You know there's a leak somewhere in some water pot or in some boiler that needs to be fixed. So it's not just that you're not focused on your chopping, but you're actually then looking at a full overall. So at 25, I was an executive chef of a large resort in Goa. I was appreciating. I wasn't given the executive chef. I was given sous chef, but I was said, coffee shed. And I had a full 360 view from my water of the pool to the poolside barbecue to the coffee shop to the room service to the amenities in the room. Largely because of the mentoring that I got from the age of 19 to the age of 25, that I could, the fasla jo bolte na, that journey that takes 15, 20 years to an executive chef, I could do much faster. Also because of that 4 or 5 years, I must have worked every single day. I haven't seen a day light. I haven't seen a sunshine. I haven't set, barring that other beach sitting and crying. I have been burying my head every day at the back of the kitchen, sleeping in a bunker. But post that 4 years, at 25, my life dramatically changed. So I'm also going to say that it's not that this industry is going to be working like a donkey for the rest of your life. Probably the entry points a little hard. It's like how you learn how to surf, surfing. The entry points are a little hard to tune off constantly. You get broken down. But once you're through that, and once you're the fun is amazing. So I would request all students to be a little patient for the first couple of years for the initial entry point.
Varsha, that's very well said. And I think you've obviously proven to be a great mentor, because I can recall quite a few of our students, like you mentioned earlier as well, quite a few of our students who've done extremely well under your mentorship. You remember Anuj, one of our students who worked with you at Olive. I mean, it's commendable where he's reached, and I think a lot of that credit is only due to the mentorship that you gave him. Noor as well.
In case of Anuj, I don't know whether you remember or not, he made a big mischief and you told him to go home. And he came with his parents crying. I said, but how can I ask Chef Sebi to take you back what you have done? He says, sir, I will never do it again. Give me one chance. So I called you. I said, Chef, we are here to make lives. So if he went to change it, let's help him. He said, fine, sir, we'll give him a second chance. And I'm so glad that you had an open mind. And this boy turned out to be a very good chef as he grew up. I'm very happy to see that how you have saved lives in this case, because we as mentors have a responsibility for the future. I'm so glad that this boy is doing so well, and I remember very clearly what he went through and how you were so very positive in your response. Thanks again for that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Chef, we have a couple of questions from our students. Now, let me start from the top. I have Vibhanshu, who's asked, how does modern interpretations and innovations affect the authenticity of heritage of a cuisine?
Okay, so first of all, I don't think everything needs to be interpreted in a modern way. There are certain things which is heritage, and that is why the word heritage or word history is so important. Considering India, we have 8,000 years of history, culture, and we probably only few races that are still alive to see that. The people in Egypt are not, people in Machu Picchu are not, people in Mesopotamia are not, but we are still very much alive. As in, I was recently working at the Indian Museum, National Museum, recreating the Indus Valley dining pop-ups. And I was seeing carbon dating history of 4,500 years of how Indian food and culture that started off at the Sindhu Saraswati Sabhyata, as we call the Indus Valley civilization, and has people traveled from there across the country carrying the same gene pool, habits, longings, food habits. So, especially being Indian, I don't think you need to interpret modern. We have a wealth of information that the rest of the world is trying to teach us now. Germany is trying to teach us, US is trying to teach us, be it Ayurveda, be it yoga, be it homeopathy, you name it. There are so many things that has come out of this culture, of this heritage that we're all proud of calling home. And rest of the world is trying to teach us. Similarly, in food, we don't need to modernize anything. If it is Indian food, and please understand, when I'm saying Indian food, I don't mean mainstream restaurant food. I mean food at Indian homes. And India has 145, 150, no, 168 registered dialects, and as many communities and as many cuisines. And in all these communities, there are sub cuisines and sub dialects. So when you have that much of diversity, and this diversity largely happens because of the climatic conditions or the biodiversity that Mother Nature and Mother India offers us. So in every part of the country, you will have different communities, different culture, different weather, different food, different biodiversity, and hence the food is different, and hence the recipes are different. And hence the style of the way they're cooked is different. The pots and pans are different. The season they're eaten is different. And please understand, each and every recipe of this was used for thousands of years as medicine, because until 100 years back, there was no white medicine in this country. And we had no issues of blood pressure or blood sugar. And we survived very well for more than 6, 7, about 8,000 years, eating our food, which have given us medicine, or medicine through food, given us vitality, given us strength to fight through various diseases and various pandemics. So if you're looking at Indian food in the perspective of Indian food, you don't need to modernize anything. However, if you feel the need to modernize something, that's your interpretation. As an artist, you are allowed to do that, but you're only allowed to do that when you have established yourself as a good artist of knowing the basics very well. Again, I will come back saying that that's why the basics of any food is very important. Take up any cuisine, be it Marathi, be it Gujarati, be it Mangalorean, be it Bant, be it East Bengal, West Bengal, barring the mainstream Punjabi food that we cook in hotels and restaurants, which is typically commercial food. You go to any part of this country, there is a cuisine. And if you have mastered even one of them, you are most allowed to then create a modern interpretation, because you're not going to mix something and create a crazy confusion. I will have the confidence. Like I said, these are all recipes that gives us vitality, gives us energy, gives us strength. So mixing up recipes, you must understand, could create health hazards in the longer run. So only when you understand the benefit of a particular food item or a spice or a condiment that goes in that recipe, what are the long-term benefits or what minerals, macro, micro, vitamins that you're getting out of it, is when you're allowed to mix and fuse things. It's not just randomly because I know how to make pasta and I know how to make butter chicken, I will put pasta and makhani sauce together and call it. That's not called innovation. I would not consider that as an innovation. And I think we have passed that phase. The rest of the world have understood it. So today, the rest of the world, if you see Scandinavia, if you see Italy, if you see Germany, if you see USA, UK, all of them have gone back to their own traditional food, looking at their roots. And today in India, we have not one roots, we have hundreds and thousands of such roots owing to different small cultures and communities. So once you've discovered this whole gamut of recipes and presented them in their correct manner, you're allowed to then create some modern interpretation out of it.
Anshu's definitely got his answer, and so has everyone else. Thanks a lot. Chef, we have a student, Shashwat, who's asking that whether working in a cruise is different from working in a hotel, and whether he should apply for a cruise after his course at ICA. What are your views on that?
You must, because cruise lines have very high standards of hygiene. I think all things should be done. You should work in a hotel, you should work in a cruise, work in a restaurant, work everywhere for a year or 2 years to get exposure. Don't it's not that you're going to work for the rest of your life in cruise. Work for a couple of years in the cruise, work for a couple of years in a hotel, work for a couple of years in a restaurant. See the entire basket. Like I said, it's a marathon race. At 40, at 50, you are still, most of these legendary restaurants in this country, like I take inspiration from Mr. E.D. Singh, Mr. Ashish Kapoor, they didn't open their first restaurant till they were probably 40 years old. And today they are some of the finest restaurateurs in the world. So it's not that you have to rush and hurry into doing something that you're not sure of. So take your time. There is absolutely no rush. Go, learn, experience, enjoy, explore. There is so much food out there in the world to learn and see and explore. Eat it. Most importantly, travel. And then when you have had your fill or you have the right motivation, please do something that you don't 6 months later, a year later, you don't feel bored. Oh, damn, I've done something, but I'm not excited about it. So make sure your calling is right, and you will know when that calling comes.
Excellent. Chef, then we have Vibhanshu again, who's asked that can authenticity and cuisine go hand in hand? Though I think you've answered that pretty well in your first answer to Vibhanshu. So would you like to add anything to that, or?
Can authenticity go hand in hand with what? What is in the other hand?
With cuisine. Innovation and authenticity.
See, innovation would have to be in technology. Innovation would have to be in technique. So let's say I'll give you some very simple example. Most of the old food was cooked in terracotta in all old history, old culture, everywhere in the world. And this terracotta was heated through stone or through upla or through wood or through haystack. Because if you put direct fire in terracotta through gas, it might crack and break. You will not be able to cook. So this time when I was doing this pop-up, for me to create a wood and a hay pit was very difficult in the National Museum at the heart of Janpath, because it will create a lot of smoke. It is also a security clearance issue because we are attached to the President's house and Vigyan Bhavan, and that was the day Mr. Donald was passing through Delhi city. So it's very complicated. So what I did, I had to make an in-between solution. I used the gas burner, low gas burner, put a net on top of it, and then put a whole like a bracket where I made a stone base. So I have a gas burner, I put a net, I put a bracket on the net, I put stones, and then I fired it up. And on top of the stones, I put upla and wood chips to create that bed that I need to fire my terracotta pot. Now, I didn't stop cooking in the terracotta pot, and I didn't move into cooking in a stainless steel pot, because I know that food will taste completely different. But at the same time, I made adjustments in using technology, because I have option of gas, which will immediately heat up the stone, and I won't have to wait for 12 or 14 hours for the stone to first heat up. So innovation should come in technology, innovation should come in techniques, innovation should come in business, innovation should come in how you operate your kitchen, how you operate your business models. It should not be applied to food, because food is something that you understand we're putting it inside our body, and you will not want to put something in your body if you're not confident of what it is. You might innovate something, but if you feel it is not right for your body, you will not put it inside. Please put yourself in the shoes of every guest that comes to your restaurant. Would every guest want to be experimented upon? I doubt. I want to eat something safe, something clean, something hygienic, something that is produced with optimal sanitation, and is whole food that gives not just vitality to body, but also satisfies your soul. It should be soul satisfying good food. Now, if you can produce that with innovation, by all means. Otherwise, stick to when it comes to food, vitality, taste, because as human beings, our body types haven't changed for good 6,000 years. Pre-6,000, we had 4 extra teeth, 2 here and 2 here, because we grind our food a little bit more. We had 38, now we have 36. No, 34, whatever. 32. We had 36, now we have 32. I'm very confused. But we haven't changed. Our length of our stomach hasn't changed. Our heights haven't changed. Our body dynamics and kinetics haven't changed. So don't do something crazy in your food that would make somebody sick.
Very well said. All right. So now we have a question from Sushant. He's a pastry student. He wants to know, what is the life expectancy that you see for fusion foods? A lot of questions around modern food, I must admit. So what is the life expectancy of this trend? Has it gone already?
So I'll tell you one little background. So my aunt is Spanish, and why am I giving this background? Because the founder father of Spanish food, or the modern Spanish food, or molecular gastronomy, is this chef, legendary chef Ferran Adrià. His son is married into my mommy's niece, so the family relative. So his first book, when it came in 1995, I have this hand-signed book called Ferran. Much before he launched his first book on molecular gastronomy, which is 1996. Following him, reading up him, getting every first copy of his book, getting all his ingredients, and I am the first chapter in the Southeast Asia. I was the first one to launch molecular gastronomy as a restaurant direction in Olive in 2005. No, much before that, 2003. Much before that, the rest of the country have even heard. We were not using the word molecular gastronomy, but we used techniques. I used to get emulsifiers, I used to get all the additives, I used to get algin, I used to get agar, and all those things, both in the pastry kitchen as well as in the hot kitchen. At some point, this kept growing. 2011, 12, I remember Chef Ferran Adrià called for a worldwide conference at the Food and Hotel Asia Summit in Singapore, which I also went to attend that year, he being my mentor, family connection, this, that. I wanted to hear what's new. And he stunned the whole world by saying he feels that molecular gastronomy has reached its peak, has no future, and will be good for mankind, and he is shutting his world's best restaurant, which was by then world's best restaurant, El Bulli, and that was a shock. And he actually shut down the restaurant, and that's about it. He said molecular gastronomy is over. I am shutting down El Bulli. Request everybody to do so and go back to cooking whole food, go back to cooking soul food, go back to cooking food that is good for yourself, and not food with gimmick. He also said that the large part of his thing about molecular gastronomy or modern food or the food with this whole new era, nouvelle food, he wanted to bring in health as a part of it, but somehow it lost it. And interestingly, unfortunately, in India, we have only taken the gimmick part of it, which is the table drama or the theatrics or the gas or the smoke or the aroma or the the fun elements. We didn't really take up farm to fork. We didn't sustainability, because a large part of the molecular gastronomy learning from him was sustainability. Because El Bulli was the first one to grow their kitchen garden. They tracked the fish, how much the fish swam on the river or the ocean. They put a sonar on the fish to track even the fat content of the fish. They would grow their own poultry. They would work with their own goat and lamb farm. So farming, sustainability, working with the local ingredients, local produce. We didn't take none of that. We just took up the foam. We took up the caviar, which is all bullshit, and it's full of chemicals. You already live in Delhi, Bombay city. You have too much unnecessary chemical that you're breathing into your body, eating through food that is laced with pesticides. You don't need any more chemical in your food to be called molecular gastronomy to make you more sick. So that's a passe. The entire world has gone ahead of it and gone ahead of the curve. It's better that all of us, and especially all of you young chefs, understand it and put it in your head. Don't get them. Focus. Implement something. If you want to come up with a modern interpretation, make sure it is your interpretation and not some copied interpretation of somebody else. That is not innovation, and neither is it going to get you anywhere. If you can come up with some technique, some thought, some recipe, something very unique, ingredient that is lost, recipes that is forgotten, is, I think, the future need or the future of the cuisine, and not modern cuisine or progressive cuisine or molecular gastronomy at all. Now, why am I telling you this? Is primarily I try to answer a various question that would come up or had come up to just put an end to this entire.
Yeah, I think we wrapped it up pretty well, Chef. Thanks. So I'm going to skip one of the other two questions that look similar to the word fusion food in it. There's a question here by a student who's asking, how do you, now this is interesting, how do you deal with staff turnover? You are investing so much time and money on them. Well, I think we'd love to hear that answer as well, Chef. How do you deal with staff turnover? Is there staff turnover?
Yes, and that's perfectly okay because if I am playing in A League, I would definitely want to play at some point in IPL, and then definitely I would want to play in Indian team at some point. So what's wrong with it? If I have the talent, I will grow, and so is everybody allowed to grow. All human beings, we have the opportunity and the right to grow ahead. So I can't be complaining, say, oh hey, I trained so and he or she has become a fantastic chef. So other day there was some study that somebody is doing, and of the top 50 chefs of the restaurant hotel industry, 30 have worked with me in the past. Does that make me any less? I think it makes me bigger and better. That so many people in their CV or while mentioning or while introducing them says, I have worked with Sabi. And I think that is how you should look at staff turnover, not look at it negatively. Look at somebody that is going away from your kitchen with your learning, and you better make sure that the learning is good, because he or she is going to carry your learning and will also carry your name. So if that person has been taught well, when that person leaves, it's actually a plus point for you and your organization. It's not a negative point. And especially in a country like India, we have never shortage people. We never shortage on skill. It's just that mentoring and training is a problem. You have to invest in training and mentoring, and it's an ongoing process. Of course, there are amazing initiatives like yourself, Arjun, doing your training, your hand-holding, you're giving skill to the young upcoming students and student chefs. Hence, I have no fear of giving my information, my recipes, my knowledge. I will happily, openly do it. I have done it and I will continue to do so. And today I tell the same to Anahita. Today the same I tell Megha. Today the same I tell Priyam, to Dhruv, to all of them. I said, please pass it on, because the more you pass it on, and the more people that leaves your kitchen will actually make you a bigger and a better chef. It's not going to take anything away from you.
I agree with that, and I can vouch for that because I've had the privilege of interacting with all of them individually, and I must say that they imbibe the same value systems that you're narrating here. We were fortunate to have had Chef Megha, as you might know already, that she interacted with our students last year as well. And of course, she gives a lot of credit to her success through your mentorship, and I think a lot of our students would do the same. So you've really hit the nail on the head, Chef, with them. Thank you. We have a student chef who's asking, and in fact, it kind of pairs up with my question as well. She wants to know, can you suggest a couple of good cookbooks? Any reference books that you find very useful that our young chefs can also refer to?
See, this Krishna Arora is what we were given in college first year, and I still feel that I haven't completed reading that book entirely. And then there was this two book by the late legendary Miss Philip, Thangami Philip. She wrote Modern Cookery 1 and 2, and today we like to look at books which are colorful, has lots of pictures and lots of interesting stories. Now, these books were, back in the days written as textbooks or like essay books, and they didn't have any of these. But today, if you look back at Modern Cookery 1 and 2, you will see almost every single Indian regional recipe that you'd want to see. And you'll see really crappy, shitty interpretations of them on social media or on Google or on Instagram, people trying to do their bit. But all these recipes are there. Now, these are two books that I really look at them as Bible when it comes to Indian regional cuisine. I'm not saying that the finest, but yes, they are. And then, of course, I've got book collections, and all your students who come and work with me has come to the library in the office, somewhere at home. I have some of the finest book collection from around the world, but the one or two or three books that I take most of my inspiration from is one by this legendary late Chef Charlie Trotter. I have been very fortunate to have come in contact with him at a very early age. And he had told me that, I see something in you. And I think just things like this makes you confident that, Chef Charlie Trotter says that he sees something in you. Probably he didn't see nothing, apart from this young, goofy boy from in India who's just started. Because I couldn't even speak to him. I was standing in front of him looking like Dale. And he was like, like, what do you want? And I'm the only colored guy in the entire room, everybody is white. So he's looking at me, he's smiling, and I don't know how to react. And then I just extended the book because I wanted his autograph. So there's three books of Chef Charlie Trotter called Kitchen Session. because he quotes in every chapter, he quotes the Vedas or the Gita, some slokas from the Gitas, and not because of that. It's just that how it connects you as a human being, how it connects with you as a person, is why I admired those three books of him. Of course, they're all personally signed by him. There's the collector's copies, and he's written this long, beautiful, messages about me. And then when he went back to Chicago, he wrote me a beautiful letter. So one of the prized position, apart from, like you mentioned, the Golden Hat and the President's Award, I think is that handwritten letter of Chef Trotter, because I could have never imagined. I haven't done anything like that for anybody. So I actually less that somebody like Chef Trotter can take out time from his schedule to do something like this. So these three books by Chef Trotter, if anybody can find them online, if they're available, it's definitely a collector's item. And there's one book by Chef Tatsuya in Sydney, by Tatsuya. Between these two books, you will get enough inspiration. And if you can't find all of the Charlie Trotter, just the kitchen session, if you can't get that book, that will give you so much inspiration that even if you have lost and lost all hope of becoming a chef, will make you become a chef all over again.
Sorry, did you say Kitchen Essentials by Charlie Trotter?
Kitchen sessions.
Kitchen Sessions, okay.
I will send you a screenshot at some point. I don't have it now, but I'll send it to you.
No problem. I'll take a note. If and when Amazon ever opens up again, I should note.
That's a good
Even when Amazon opens, otherwise I shall Google it. All right.
Otherwise, I'll photocopy it and send it to you.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. Thank you. All right. Now I just have one or two questions of my own, and I will not go without this. You've been judging for the longest time. I remember you've been judging competitions. You've judged TV shows. Now, a lot of our students really work hard towards these competitions because I think, like you put it yourself, it gives a lot of good exposure. As a judge, what do you think are the most important two, maybe three things that help a contestant stand out? What is that one, two or three points of advice that you would say, you know what, they stand out?
See, this is a very complex question. I told you not to be a difficult one, but you have to do it. See, for a judge, first of all, that judge is not any judge for that matter. Most judges today are all qualified and certified by IFCA and wax bodies and all of that. A judge is judging a student or a recipe based on a parameter or a standard in his or her head, not comparing to the next plate, because all of us as participants, we say, oh, my food is better than that, but how did that person win and I didn't? That happens quite often. All students have it. I have had it when I had gone to culinary competitions. Oh, damn, yeah, my food is so much better, looks so much exciting. How did that person win and I didn't? So a judge is always judging you with a parameter in his or her head and not comparing you with a plate next to you. Until unless it comes to the top three, when you have to give medals, it happens in these live challenges where you can see the plates and you have to then really choose who's silver, who's gold, and who's bronze. Otherwise, it's purely a set format or a standard in a judge's mind that the judge is trying to judge you with. It could be various factors. It definitely would start with the weight of products on the plate. If you have kept the basic principles in terms of the balance of the plate. So whether the starch,
textures, colors,
or the green, if it's a balanced plate. So balance of the plate, because we see a lot of plates which are disbalanced. And why are we coming back to balanced plate? Because a balanced plate is going to make you healthy. A disbalanced plate will make you unhealthy. And that is why these factors is what you get judged before. Then when you see a very pretty plate or very fine sugar work or very fine, garnishes, before you go to that, these factors, if these are not correct, you already, are out of the race in the judge's mind. So even if you might feel that, oh, this is one of the finest plates to look at, if it doesn't fall on those parameters, it has, lost out of the battle to the top 10 or the top 5 or top 3. And that is why a lot of the times when we judge plates, we say, oh, that plate looks so much better than this one, but it didn't win. And these are the few factors that you have to keep in mind as a student who has to go and participate at the rules in terms of the size of the plate, where you put food, quantity of food. If it's a starter plate, what's the weight? If it's a main course, if it's a dessert, if it's a petit course, if it's a 3-course plate. If the sizes would again vary if you're eating 3 course. rather than just one coach. So it's not that it's a standard pitch. You have to keep applying logic at every step to be a good. And then, of course, you have to participate a lot. You go to various competitions to see how others are participating, and mentor with some of these teams that are practicing. I did that as a young chef. I was very lucky to work with the team that was going and the World Cup. And I picked up a lot of my training from working with them. I was basically the runner, the ball boy. Ki bhai, wo bhaji leke aa, run to the cold room. And I was 18, 19, something so that time. But I thought I enjoyed this exposure because you don't get that exposure otherwise.
That's true. Well, that's very well said, Chef. And I hope that we keep concentrating on those very fine points that you mentioned about balancing. I think a lot of us forget that. We keep running after the appearance while we forget the composition is as important or sometimes more important. Chef, we have a student from Nishta here, one of our students, that on what are your tips on how to motivate your staff to work better? I've seen in your kitchens, I was fortunate, as I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I visited Big Brewski and I saw the world's largest or India's largest live kitchen? I mean, that's how I was described.
India's largest kitchen and Asia's largest restaurant. It seats about 3,000 people on restaurant style, and then it has a banquet and a nightclub area or a club area attached to it that can take additionally another 1,000, 1,500 people standing. So it can, in full capacity, it can take 5,000 people, 3,000 seating and 2,000 in banqueting and standing.
And so irony is, after all that capacity, I waited for 40 minutes and I saw a very motivated team. Call you next time. Yeah, I'll do that. But I saw a very motivated team at the back. So Nishta's question is, how do you get a team to get motivated like that?
I think you have to give respect to people. You can't treat people, you don't give them salary or pay them well. People like to have their own dignity, own respect. You have to respect yourself. As a team leader, you go to decide what is the way forward. It's not that it's a parliament, or it's not like it's democracy, but you still got to give a hearing. Part of the staff will come with very important suggestions, and you have to incorporate them. People feel that everybody has been heard, and there are genuine good suggestions, not just to make people happy. So respect people, incorporate everybody into the mainstream of when you do the kitchen briefing. So it's very important to have 2 kitchen briefings. I think half time or at least one. We always do one of these motivating sessions every month, be it a volleyball match, football match, cricket match. Like I was saying, if you out of that kitchen day and give 1 day break to kind of bond and do team building, that I do at all my. I see immense importance to my staff cafeteria food. I personally cook at the staff cafeteria till date, and in every hotel and restaurant I've cooked around the world, I can proudly tell you, Arjun, I have cooked in every single staff cafeteria. I have in fact cooked more at the staff cafeteria than actually in my guest cooking line, which I would leave to my sous chef, like let's say Chef Megha or Dhruv or somebody is doing that, while I'm back at the staff cafeteria cooking at least one meal for the staff, because I eat it myself. And if I don't enjoy my meal that I'm eating, and if I'm not satiated or hungry, I can never give my 100% at work. So this is a few factors that I of course employ upon. And staff uniform, good chef coat, a laundered nice chef coat gives you a lot of confidence, makes you feel proud. This is again something Mr. Datta has taught me. So it's something that I carry forward as a learning across all my restaurants and all my businesses.
Wonderful. Well, Chef, that's actually quite motivating myself, and I think we can certainly agree a lot of on all the points that you mentioned there. Dignity and respect, and most of all, the feeling of being involved is a true culture that should be imbibed. Wonderful. Do we have any last questions from our students? Because I know I'm exhausting Chef Xavier, though his energy doesn't seem to be wavering at all.
5 days in bed. I'm losing my mind. I'm going to now make orange juice and start making wine at home. I've told Nephew to please pass me a Huram juicer. He has this fancy juicer called Huram. Makes very clean juices. So I'm going to make orange juice and grape juice, because everybody is overloading everybody with oranges because it's vitamin C and this COVID, everybody's scared, have vitamin C. I'm going to turn the damn vitamin C into vitamin W, and
without quoting anyone or naming the person, as long as you're not putting disinfectants or dishwashing, whatever the liquid is in your body. Just put in the real stuff.
I'm going to convert it to vitamin W, which is in your glass.
All right, I do have a last question. I will ask. We will wrap it up after that. We've taken up a lot of your time. So Vibhanshu, our student, one of our first students who asked you a question, has asked, "What is your idea of comfort food?" Interesting.
So, I went for this. I have to tell you a little story. It might take a minute or so.
That's all right.
Mr. Datta would know this gentleman called Mr. Chef Amit Chaudhary, who is now the head of the Taj Group.
Okay. Do you remember? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's now succeeded Chef Hemant Obra. He's now the Taj Supremo. So there was this book launch that was happening called My Last Supper, and why it is very connected to this question is because whatever is your most comfort food is what you would probably ideally like to eat when you're dying or about to die. Like, people when they're hung or, all this happens, they ask you, what is your last wish? What do you want to eat? So the Last Supper is this book that anybody can pick it up on internet. And is a collection of recipes of chefs from around the world. And the book got launched. The book cover has the legendary late chef Anthony Bourdain standing completely naked, holding a massive beef bone, okay, in a right place, just hiding his essentials in a very suggestive manner. So for the launch, they made a cutout of him. Larger, he's quite a tall man, but bigger than that. 8 feet tall, naked Anthony Bourdain was standing on the stage, okay, for this book launch. And you have to see this picture on internet. After this, whenever you hang up, you have to go and check out this and see how obnoxious. But it's only Chef Bourdain who can carry this off. On this, there were some of the finest chefs of the world has donated one recipe, and Chef Chaudhary is the only Indian who has made a page which has a vivid description of something like almost like a state banquet. Now, of course, it fits the bill of an Indian king or somebody as big of an aura of Chef Chaudhary, because then you have the entire Taj Group and but I think the entire the whole story of last up is about connecting to your comfort food and not eating something really fancy. And one of my things why stories because same with me, and then I would want to eat something simple as my comfort. And it has always been home food. I think it's all for all of us. Comfort food is home food, and for me, I like rajma chawal, khadi chawal. I make a bean chicken soup. Like this. Really, what I call the some bones and rings thrown into it, and then thickened with ragi. I make an amazing khichdi, but it is always made with jawar, bajra, or millets. So these pretty much 4 or 5 things is my comfort, and I guess based on who is from where. Also ragi mudda. I down south, I'm constantly eating ragi. Basically, is one of the combinations that I like. I somehow not a very fish curry rice kind of a guy. I don't know why, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So you must look up this book.
I will. I've written it down. Again, one of the things that I'll do once Amazon starts. One of my things to do. All right. Anyways, I think.
And you also read the chapter where Chef Chaudhary has written his Last Supper, and then you'll know the joke. You have to take this off the recording part of it. I'm crucified for this.
Well, don't worry. It's only going on YouTube. Barely any people look at that.
And he will know because I was the only Indian ever in that Crown Casino in Melbourne. There was no other Indian in that, entire audience. You know, yeah. This is launched in Melbourne in Crown Casino in 2008. Beautiful book about everybody's comfort food, or called The Last Supper of the Best Chefs of the World.
Wonderful. All right, Chef, though I promised I was the last, but I do have a question which I can't resist asking. It's from Shazeen. Shazeen, you would remember, was working with you in Chandigarh last year in November when you did that pop-up. There were these few boys who came and joined you for that pop-up in Chandigarh. So Shazeen has asked that, Chef, what's your take on the number of courses to be served nowadays? As I've been a part of your pop-up in Chandigarh and I've seen there is not too much of appetite.
Sorry, say again. What is that?
Okay, so the question, though it's in the chat box, I'll just read it out again. What's your take on the number of courses to be served nowadays? So in banquets, in dinners, etc., meals, what's your take? As he's observed during the pop-up in Chandigarh, that there's been a reduction or a alteration in the appetite that diners eat.
So, today what we do is, of course, our appetites have gone lesser, right, Arjun? Because now, of course, last 4 days we're sitting at home and eating, so it's only increased. But otherwise, if you notice, our lifestyles have become very sedentary. We're not physically working in the farms or, doing cattle pushing or, tilling the land, none of that. So obviously, our requirement of food and energy, calorie and all, we have to go to a gym to burn it. So I tried to make the portions really small in Chandigarh. So he's right that I made the portion so small, like it was like 2 bites or 2 spoons, because it was also a retreat. People just didn't want to eat there. Now, this part probably he wasn't aware that they came to experience an Indian style of life, a holistic life. So they had to try various things, which were the food was based on Ayurvedic principles, or regional ingredients, local ingredients, sustainable cooking style. It was vegetarian, barring salmon, which was the only thing I think we used. Everything was vegetarian for the 7-8 days. So it was also a chef's retreat. And that is why everybody wanted to try really small portions of various things that chefs were cooking or part of the thing. So 2 reasons. Yes, of course, appetites have gone smaller and people's interest is much more now to taste various things. So if they want to try various things, rather than going to a large buffet, if you can plate and give them out small portions, and that is why the tasting menu and all has become so popular. Recently, I know the first tasting menu in Bellissima, Bombay, which was styled after I came back from Australia, working with the if you look it up and all, maybe there's some information on the menu, that tasting menu or grazing menu. It's called grazing, means you eat little. And we call it biggest touch or biggest station. Biggest, you're eating small, big. So yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Chef Zavi. Wonderful listening to you, very inspiring. And to sum up of what all you said, I would recall the line you used, the fire in the belly. I think that is the ultimate. If you keep that fire burning and don't let it go down with the passage of time or age, then you are in for great things. So it's the job of all the mentors like you, faculty at our institutes, to keep the fire in the belly burning, bright and great in all the students, all the people who come in contact with us. So thank you very much. You've been most inspiring. And I'm sure it has burnt a lot of fires in the bellies in a lot of our students, and they look forward to a great career ahead. Thanks. Thanks indeed.
Thank you so much. I'll ask all our students to welcome a little round of applause for our chef.
Thank you, Mr. Datta. Thank you, Arjun.